commodity prices,
Yes.
wide swings, went up, coming down, and so on. Supply chain disruptions. We have digital disruptions, which is an ongoing process. So a lot of things affecting us, right? And we are trying to cope with the consequences of this, and adding to this, political conflicts. The champion of freedoms.
Yeah.
Right? That will affect, because the war can be potentially escalated into regional war, or even the global war, right? People are talking about World War III, and if that happens, of course, it will affect all of us, socially, economically, and it will affect the welfare. And Islamic finance have the same rules, being financial intermediaries, allocating fund, and so on. But then Islamic finance, I think, in terms of contributing, or the interplay between Islamic finance and sustainable development goals, Islamic finance, I would say, become a more natural players that can contribute directly to sustainable development goals. And there are two ways we can respond to them. First, we can try to anticipate the crisis and then try to avoid them. So that's why a lot of work that has been done try to predict the occurrence of crisis as a result of this volatile world, or volatility, uncertainty, and so on. The other way, we can embrace the uncertainty, right?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi everyone, welcome back to Library Guest from U-III Library Podcast. This podcast still in the series of Third International Conference on Muslim World, Economic and Business, with the title Sustainable Finance Amid Global Volatility, Forging the Pathway to Sustain the Future. And today we are doing podcast with a very special person, especially when we're talking about his contribution in Islamic finance and economics. He began an academic career in 1996 as an assistant professor, and then he promoted into associate professor in 1998, and then become full professor in 2003. He ever be part of International Islamic University Malaysia, Universitas Putra Malaysia, and currently he became a deputy president of academic and dean in International Center of Education in Islamic Finance University Malaysia. I welcome Professor Dr. Mansor Ibrahim. Assalamualaikum, Professor. How are you?
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's good to be here.
Yes, we're so honored to have you here, sir, especially because we have previous section in yesterday talking about global financial crisis. And today we will talking more deep about global volatility and sustainable finance. So talking about global volatility, I also saw some research you have been done. You basically talking so many things about risk, monetary, and finance. So what I want to ask is, my first question is, how do you see the global condition so far?
If we look at right now, there are so many things that are happening. Right?
Yes.
If we go back prior to the COVID-19, we have basically the US-China trade war. It's still ongoing, have not stopped yet.
Yes.
And then we were hit by the COVID-19 in the year 2020 and 2021. We came out from the COVID, but then the impact of COVID is still there. Many countries are still struggling to recover from the adverse impact of COVID, especially in terms of high unemployment, the poverty that the COVID have pushed certain households into being unemployed or having low income and so on. And post-COVID, we have new challenges coming up. So we have policy normalization in the US. You look at in the year 2022, so many times that US have increased the interest rate, and that affects, of course, the emerging
Yes, of
markets.
course.
And you have seen the ringgit depreciated, the rupiah depreciated, and many other regions.
It's affecting
Uh,
around the
Yeah,
world.
it's affecting everybody.
Yes.
As people said, if the US sneeze, we catch the cold, right? So we are affected by US. And we also see the commodity prices,
Yes.
wide swings, went up, coming down, and so on. Supply chain disruptions. We have digital disruptions, which is an ongoing process. So a lot of things affecting us, right? And we are trying to cope with the consequences of this, and adding to this, political conflicts
Yes.
that make things worse. Russia-Ukraine's war, and the aggressions of Israel in Palestine.
Yes.
So that's
Unfortunately.
bad news, supported by the so-called the champion of freedoms.
Yeah.
So that will affect, because the war can be potentially escalated into regional war, or even the global war, right? People are
Yes.
talking about World War III, and if that happens, of course, it will affect all of us, socially, economically, and it will affect the welfare. And we are recovering in terms of the economy, but then what we are going to see in the future will depend so much on what we are witnessing in the Middle East, especially the aggression of Israel toward Palestinians.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And if I may add something, all of these things that happen will affect the sustainability of the future, right? So talking about escalating the everything that happened and talking about sustainability of the future, how do you think the interplay between finance and sustainability should done at a large scale?
Now, we have first need to understand the role of finance first, right? And then we can take a look at the emerging new, I think cannot be said new because it has been 30 years, 40 years, but the emerging Islamic finance that have shaped, I think, the global financial scenes. Now, if we look at finance in general, the main role of finance is allocation of funds.
Yes.
And the financial markets are able to allocate funds very efficiently because of economies of scales in information processing, because of their ability to diversify risk. They are able to gather small funds and put them together and then invest those funds in various type of projects. So in the process, risk is diversified. Right? And apart from that, they help households to smooth consumptions. They help firms to basically relax what we term as credit constraint and so on. And Islamic finance have the same rules, being financial intermediaries, allocating funds and so on. But then Islamic finance, I think in terms of contributing or the interplay between Islamic finance and sustainable development goals, Islamic finance, I would say, become a more natural players that can contribute directly to sustainable development goals. There are many goals in SDG that Islamic finance can hit based on simply the very characteristic of Islamic finance. For example, the connectivity between financings and the real sector, because any financing coming from Islamic finance must be based on the real sector.
Yes.
So in that way, it allows the economy to be what we term as less pro-cyclical, or may not be subject to what we term as boom-bust cycle, because the financings follow the real sector. And we have risk sharing.
Yes.
And risk sharing, of course, will alleviate or mitigate the burdens if any shocks happens, because everyone shares the same risk.
Yes.
Right? So those are two characteristics of Islamic finance that can basically hit the goals, for example, in terms of poverty. Right? And if we can bring in Islamic social finance to have the full Islamic financial system, then we have a built-in framework to ensure that everyone will not be left behind.
Yes,
right? So those
absolutely.
are one thing. Now, and if we look at financing, of course, most of financings go to the last project and so on. And on the basis of risk sharing, on the basis of participation, on the basis of profit and loss sharing, on the basis of musyarakah or mudarabah, for example, Islamic finance is the bank, for example, can be the main players in making decisions where the money go to,
Yes.
right? Because they have a stake in there, they have responsibility. So specifically, any intermediation in Islamic finance should be intermediated in such a way that it creates value to society. And in Malaysia, we term this as value-based intermediations.
Value-based.
You intermediate, but then you have to create value.
Yes.
It should not harm society and so on. And that's basically the underlying principle of Islamic finance. The maqasid part, protection of wealth specifically, protection of life and so on. So these are embedded in Islamic finance. So I would say the interplay may be the two soft words, right? Because Islamic finance and sustainability is basically coupling.
Yeah.
They are closely knit together, right? Where the SDGs is manifestations of whether we stick to the principle of Islamic finance or not. Because it should become natural in the context of SDG as part of Islamic finance objective. So that's the way I see the interplay between finance and SDG.
And SDGs. So that's very interesting because from if I ask my friends about what is sustainable issue and what do you know about sustainable issue, people still, limited his thinking about sustainability issue is only a specific issue for a specific community, like scientists or something like that. Then when we talk about sustainability as sustainable finance, they still skeptics about it. So that's very interesting, guys. So you have to see again, try to rewind what Professor Mansor already talked about, the sustainable interplay, the sustainable finance and the interplay between them. Now next to the third question, because we see, now scholar we know the term or acronym FUCA. FUCA. Maybe not many people already know about FUCA, but FUCA acronym is basically built because of we see the increasing of uncertainty around us, the rapid changes around us, to the point that everything seems to look like interconnected. Yep. And make things so confusing, so ambiguous. So I would like to ask you, sir, maybe you could enlighten us with your opinion and your knowledge on how do you think Islamic finance could contribute in the FUCA world?
Okay. Yep. We have discussed of what have happened and what is going on now. And of course, the word VUCA can summarize that perfectly. The world is highly volatile, highly uncertain, and things become more complex.
Yes.
Right? They're like very more complex. Adding to this complexity would be the fintechs, disruptions, digitalizations, so complex. I myself do not understand how Bitcoin works, how crypto works. Right? And
I also not understand.
Many people do not understand them,
yes.
But then they become part and parcel of our life. So things become more complex, things become more and more ambiguous. Right? And I emphasize the fact that, of course, in this type of worlds, right, we are going to have shocks, we are going to have crises. And there are two ways we can respond to them. First, we can try to anticipate the crisis and then try to avoid them. So that's why a lot of work that has been done try to predict the occurrence of crisis as a result of this volatile world or volatility, uncertainty, and so on. The other way, we can embrace the uncertainty, right, as part of our life. Basically, we can embrace them. But then we have to find a way in order to mitigate the impact of that uncertainty.
Yes, absolutely. I also agree.
So that not only one segment of society adversely affected, the other one is not affected. And if we look across, for example, normally the one who will be affected by uncertainty, volatility, or ambiguity, complexity that happen out there would be those who are at the lower end of income strata.
Yes.
Right?
Unfortunately, that
the
happened
poor,
yet.
because they don't have self-protections.
Yes.
They lack safety nets and so on. The rich, of course, they will be affected, but then they are still okay even if they are affected, because there are a lot of hedging instruments.
Yes.
Right? They get access to basically financial instruments. They get access to various type of investments. So they will be affected, but more of less impact for
Yes.
them.
And those don't have any hedging will suffer the most.
Will suffer, yes.
Yes.
So if we look in that context, right, how to bring society together moving forward. Right? Now, if we look into the let's say Western system, for example, or capitalist system, the whole notion of capitalist system is basically the importance of shareholders, right? And of course, as time evolve, we see more emphasis on the stakeholders even from Western system. But if we look at Islamic financial system, or more broadly Islamic economy, the emphasis from the beginning, right, is stakeholders and then shareholders. Because our basic principle in Islamic finance or Islamic economy, collective welfare take precedence over individual welfare, right? So which means that you look at whatever you look at, when you make analysis and so on, benefit to society come first.
Yes.
Not individual come first. So it's kind of the reverse. Right? For Western economy, individual come first, and then if you look at the classical economy, for example, they say it's invincible hand will do the work, so that society will be better off. No, and we know that over the past many years, there's no invisible hands.
Yes. The inequality is still there.
Yes, and the pursuit of individual interest can cause harm to society.
Yes,
right? With all type of externalities and so on. And now we are facing with climate risk, climate changes, global warming, all type of those problems, right? But then in Islamic finance and Islamic economy, we have that basics, that collective welfare should come first. Right? Collective welfare should come first, because our underlying principles or our own objective is different.
Yes.
Than what has been laid out by the Western economics, for example.
Okay.
Right?
Professor, maybe you could emphasize more about why Islamic finance, you said before, our objective is different.
Yeah.
But maybe, again, there is some skepticism in the people that thinking about, it's the same between Islamic finance and conventional finance. Maybe you could.
Let me bring to the Islamic finance, and then maybe I can discuss a little bit the reality of Islamic finance and the ideal of what we would like to see in Islamic finance, that I think all of us should push forward to reach that ideal. Right? Now, I said Islamic finance. Normally when people say Islamic finance, people see banking, people see stock market, where simply stock market we classify Sharia compliant stocks, non-Sharia compliant stock that allow people to invest. We see sukuk, we see takaful, but that half of the Islamic finance, because when we say finance, it's basically you transfer the funds from those who have to those who need.
Yes.
Right? And those banking, takaful, or capital market, they transfer funds on the premise that those who transfer the fund, what we term as investors, will get the return. But then in Islam or in Islamic finance, there also transfer of fund without return. The principal or the return itself, and that through zakat and through awqaf. So involve transfer of fund too. So ideally, if we have full integration of these two, right, and we will not have problem in coping whatever adversities that we face during the VUCA rules, right? Because Islamic economy, Islamic financial system is self-stabilizing.
Yes.
It's self-stabilizing. We will learn in economics that fiscal policy is self-stabilizing, right? The stabilizing effect of fiscal policy, but not monetary policy.
Yes.
Why? Because monetary policy depends on the interest rate. But if we depend on the Islamic financial system, they will be self-stabilizing in the sense that in bad times, the poor will be protected. Right? So everyone will share the prosperity and so on. Now, we start Islamic finance far back. I think Malaysia 1982, Indonesia a little bit later on, and in Middle East 1970s and so on, with the high hopes, right, that Islamic finance will play these roles. Right? But as time proceeds, it seems that business take over as the main objective, and that's why currently a lot of debate is taking place to bring back Islamic finance to its real objective. I think there are a lot of discussions here too in Indonesia, and then in Malaysia, for example, Malaysia has set up MIFC leadership councils to look into on how to navigate Islamic finance moving forward, and they come up with the frameworks to move Islamic finance not only to ensure that financing is halal, but must be halal tayyiban.
Yes.
Right? Which
Halal
means
and tayyib, guys.
move up further, because we do not want to just meet the standard.
Yes.
And it's true for every Muslim.
Yes.
We just do not want to be Muslim. We want to be mu'min. We just do not want to be mu'min. We want to be muhsin. Right? So these are kind of the grading that we want to upgrade ourselves, and the same thing with Islamic finance. So there are movements there. So for me, I have confidence, right, as long as all of us take responsibility to look at it, to make more analysis, give opinions, do research, data-driven, so that we can propel Islamic finance further in order for us, right, to navigate through, to ride through this, what you say, it's vocabularies, volatility, uncertainty, the complexity and ambiguity, right? So let's hope for the best, because I would like to see Islamic finance become the mainstream.
Yes, I also agree with that. Because beside what we have, what we could have, we also have to, have the value, right? I also mesmerized with all the Islamic scholars doing their research on how Islamic finance could done, and that's so fantastic, guys, to discuss more about that. So maybe, sir, we could back to the topic about sustainability.
Yes.
And Islamic finance. Basically, we know from your previous explanation that FUCA is stand for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And we know currently there is an emerging, you said also before, about the financial technology that create more ambiguity. So, in your perspective, how maybe Islamic value, Islamic finance, Islamic value could embed in the Islamic finance technology?
Okay. What you have raised is not something new, but when it comes to the role of value, right? We all, I think, in some way or another, we study economics, right? And economics is basically try to understand human behavior.
Yes.
How people make decisions, how people choose among the various options, right? And of course, in the standard textbooks, people choose on the basis of try to maximizing satisfactions and so on. But then in doing so, all of us face constraints. Right? Constraint means the governing framework, right, or what we term as governance, that dictate our choice or shape our choice, right? And those constraints are two, formal law and rules, because in choosing to do something, we are constrained by the law. Right? We can do this, we cannot do this. We're constrained by the process. So that are formal. But then there are other constraints which is internal, our own value, right? Why someone do not try to get the maximum profit as possible? Because in getting those, you have to violate certain value. We do not do that, right? So that's why the value coming in. So in the area of economics of institutions, for example, we look at this what we term as institutional framework that cover formal rules, law, regulations, enforcement mechanism, and informal law. Informal law means our own value, our own cooperation, our civicness, and that will shape our behavior, right? So I always say when I debate with my friend regarding the monetary system, for example, you can have a robust monetary system, but if you have people that have no value running the system, right? It will be fruitless, right?
Yes.
But then if you have good people but system is bad, it's unproductive.
Yes.
So how can the good people contribute when you have system is bad? So you need to have both, right? So Islamic values is very important because Islamic value is unchangeable from the time of Prophet or even the time before the Prophets up until now, right? The value is the same because that one has been carved to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Western value may keep on changing. We do not know, right? Because they change the value. That something not acceptable before now become acceptable, but not in Islam. Right? The value remain the same. Things change because of context only that allow us to have certain flexibility and so on. Right? So I think Islamic value is so important and is part of parcel and should be included in any study of behavior, including economic behavior.
Yes. I just remember one of my lecturers say, in Islamic finance, we have to put ihsan inside the system, inside the value, because when we put in ihsan, everything will be, maslahah will come to the society. That's very interesting, sir.
Yep.
Okay, maybe for a closing statement, maybe you could share with us how we, especially the millennial and Z generation, could contribute to face the issue of sustainability from Islamic perspective.
No, I think the message for me for millennials or even for everyone, okay. I think when it comes to the problem of sustainability, for example, right, for us to ponder, to look at what is happening, right? If we read the verse of Al-Quran, for example, that Allah says, appear al-fasad. It can be many things, fasad, right? The bad things, climate risk, disaster, war, right? And the morals, the lack of moral compass that we have seen. So all fasad that have taken place here, right? On land or undersea and so on, fil barri wal bahri, we see the fasad and so on. And that the result of our own actions, our own hands. Right? So millennial needs to understand that what you see is the result of our own actions. And disaster that have taken place, all these things that have taken place, and the purpose, right? Allah makes some of you to taste the consequences of your actions. Right? That's why, because of you throwing trash around, do not recycle, right? And cut the tree and so on, and you have flooding and so on. Some of us taste the consequences. And Allah said to us, the purpose of that, for you to return to Him. We need to be reminded always.
Yes.
So sometimes the good thing or the bad thing, the purpose is to remind us to go back to Allah, to stick to the teaching. And stick to the teachings, go back to the idea of sustainability.
Yes.
Right? Where basically we have to create balance. And my colleagues at INSEF always promoting, we have the role to create what we term as mizan, balance, right? In society, in many aspects, balance in the ecosystem, balance in the environments. That's our role that we need to play. And I believe that millennials know this thing, and they will take actions. I have high hope for them, because looking at what we have seen so far, their reactions to the very basic principle of crime, war crime, for example, they are coming up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's a good thing. So they have that realization. So, but then remember that whatever happens is for us to return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Thank you so much for the closing remarks from you, Professor Mansor. So that is our today session in this podcast as a series of ICM Web, third ICM Web 2024. We really hope everything around us will come to a better future, inshallah. So see you again, guys.
See you.
Bye.